We're about to begin the service, so I'm going to ask if you have cell phones, other devices that make noise, please silence them at this time out of respect for the family. So now we offer these words of prayer on behalf of Richard Scott Behrman. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Blessed be God's name, whose glorious dominion is forever and ever. Adonai hu ha'Elohim, the eternal is God. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the eternal is our God, the eternal alone. Adonai Natan v'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God has given, now God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Death has taken our beloved Richard Behrman. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Rick's love that united us in life, in which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's paths, and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all of these and more, we give our thanks to God. And if you'd like to join with me in the words of the 23rd Psalm, please feel free to do so. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today I stand here not only as a rabbi, but also as a close friend. The words I share now are meant to express what I suspect many of us feel. Indeed, at this time, this day, most of us are in shock, in a state of disbelief. How can someone as full of life as Rick Behrman be no longer a part of our lives or our world? Rick, the father who adored his children, the husband devoted to his wife, the friend who entertained us with his witty, honest, and sometimes even corny words. He's no longer here physically, but the memories he created are so vibrant that he will be alive in our hearts for as long as we are here to remember him. It is written in a poem that we live in deeds, not years, in thoughts, not breaths. He most lives who thinks, feels, who thinks the most, who feels the noblest, who acts the best, lives in 1 hour more than in years do some. As long as I have known Rick, he certainly lived his life fully and with enthusiasm. In his 61 years, he truly did more than many of us will do if blessed with many more years. I first met Rick when Gail and I decided to get married. I had to meet this guy who was so much like a brother to Gail, a close friend since high school, and I know that some of you also knew Rick back then. He and I quickly became friends, so I decided to ask him to be part of our wedding. It was surprising how quickly we enjoyed sharing a similar corny sense of humor and puns. Rick was beginning his dental career at the time. A few years later, we were fortunate to meet the wonderful woman that Rick had met, a social worker who was also a great waitress at a Chinese restaurant. You two were definitely soulmates, and as you and Rick often said, two peas in a pod. Being able to officiate at your wedding as a friend was a real privilege. Seeing Rick so happy, finding a perfect mate was the best gift of all. Not only did Rick receive the gift of a wonderful mate, your mom Florence of blessed memory and your Aunt Sandy embraced and welcomed him too. And Lynn, you knew how to deal with and appreciate Rick's sometimes blunt honesty. You and Rick created a beautiful family of your own with the births of Neil and Shelby. He was so proud of you two and loved you dearly. He certainly bragged about you both in the best way. Not only did our family celebrate the births of children together, our kids became friends. Neil and my daughter Rachel were close in age and would sit in the back seat of our minivan when we went to places together. Rachel couldn't be here, but I know she's thinking about you and she sends her condolences as well. Rick was very handy mechanically. Not only is that a good trait for a dentist, but in his time away from work, he was able to do a lot around the house. While in college, he worked as a switchboard operator to earn money for school. It was impressive to see how this related to his hobby, collecting old phones and making them work. He had one of those old switchboards you sat at with a bunch of plugs and wires where you make a certain phone work. And he had phones anywhere in the house he could plug in and make them work. And it was amazing to see the different kinds of phones he had. Another one of Rick's hobbies was his love of cooking and fine dining. Many years ago, while in Milwaukee for a professional conference, he went to a fish restaurant with us where he ordered a certain kind of chowder. It was so good he had to have them pack more so he could bring it back home. And lest we forget, Rick was a chocoholic. One of the best gifts you could give him was anything made of chocolate. Rick loved travel, and Lynn, the two of you have shared many great trips. Your recent trip to France, an adventure as he described it, fulfilled his dream of seeing Europe. You also enjoyed cruises to relax and frequent trips to Chicago where we had a chance to get together. He lived well, and he worked hard in order to be able to do so. He had every reason to be proud of the life he created for himself and his family. Rick had a keen sense of the business of his profession. This allowed him to work in a dental practice and also in the insurance business for a number of years. He was a skilled dentist, probably related to his being handy with tools. And I know this firsthand as one of his patients during the years that we lived in Cleveland. While he could be proud of his professional skills, he understood work as a means to an end, that quality of life that he sought. Recently, he started thinking about how his work will allow him to enjoy retirement. And that's what's so sad at this time, that he's not allowed to reach that time and enjoy what he worked so hard for. Clearly, there's so much more in life that Rick would have liked to have enjoyed, and that he certainly deserved to live for. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, but he was blessed in many ways. His wonderful marriage to you, Lynn, being able to see both of his children marry and feel good about your spouses, a beautiful home, and most of all, so many great memories that he created. Rick would not have wanted to suffer long, and fortunately he didn't suffer long, but for the rest of us, his passing relatively quickly and so young is hard. So let us consider the following words. When I die, cry not the tears of bitterness, but the tears of sadness, for the loss of love. We have reasons to be angry and bitter, but it's the loss of this friend's love that we mourn. Yet such love and caring are always with us. His loyal friendship through the years was a gift and will never be forgotten. William Penn once wrote, "They that love beyond the world cannot be separated. Death cannot kill what never dies, nor can spirits ever be divided that love and live in the same divine principle, the root and record of their friendship. Death is but a crossing the world as friends do the seas. They live in one another still." Now at this time, I hope that Rick would forgive me for quoting a president that I'm almost positive he did not vote for. But it's the message that's more important than the messenger. When learning of the death of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, President Bill Clinton said what would be most appropriate for many of us to say here at this time, "Shalom Chaver," goodbye my friend. Zichrono livracha, may Richard Behrman always be remembered for the blessing and gift that was his life. Esa einai el heharim me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the eternal God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. See, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. We are assembled with our friends in the darkness that has fallen upon them. We raise our voices together to the source of life, asking for comfort and strength. We need light when gloom darkens our lives. We need fortitude and courage when pain and loss assail us. May we find these in God, who preserves from destruction all that is good. Let us find them too in loved ones and companions who do God's work by binding up the wounds of the stricken. Who among us has not passed through some trials and bereavements? Some bear fresh wounds in their hearts and therefore feel more keenly the kinship of sorrow. Others, whose days of mourning are more remote, still recall the comfort that sympathy brought to their sorrowing hearts. May our sharing of sorrow and our deeds of solace bring comfort to the loved ones of Richard Scott Behrman. Dear God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you, the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we now invoke your name, Almighty God, and I'll ask all who can comfortably do so to please rise at this time. El malei rachamim, shechem bamromim, hamsei menucha nechana tachat kanfei hashechina im kedoshim utahorim, kazor harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Ephraim Shmuel ben Shlomo Yitzchak, shehalach le'olamo. Baal harachamim yastereu b'seter kenafav le'olamim, vayitzror b'tzror chaim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar. Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Richard Scott Behrman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal Spirit, and let his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. God is his inheritance, may he rest in peace. And let us now say, Amen. As our chapel prayers are completed, at this time, you may be seated for a moment. I do want to announce that we're going to be continuing with prayers at the cemetery, and the funeral directors will give instructions to everybody who is going to the cemetery. Upon return from the cemetery to the house, we'll begin Shiva condolence visits, and that will be today until 8 p.m. But upon our return, we're going to have a short afternoon service, and then the meal of condolence. So the family will be eating first, served first a meal, and then others can stay and visit and share some time with them. Tomorrow Shiva is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a service at 7 p.m. in the evening.